Welcome to TiffDoesLoans podcast. Today I have Ezra Leyton.
Oh,
How
thank
are
you.
you?
I'm doing well.
Thank you so much for coming. So you
course.
are owner of Marquis Commercial?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So commercial real estate, everything, but they do not stop there. Development, they handle distressed properties, loans, just all over the board. So amazing. Why don't you just kind of get started, and how did you get into real estate, and how did that, because you are tapped into so many different, divisions.
Yes.
What kind of made you stick with that commercial as your primary?
Great question. So Marquis Commercial is one of 4 divisions, as you had mentioned. So there is Marquis Signature Properties, which is kind of the residential aspect. Marquis Capital, which is our debt advisory service, and where we do our financing. And then, of course, Marquis Commercial, which is our primary business driver. And then a separate segment, which is the development aspect, would be La House Company and La House Construction. I got into the industry about 20 years ago. A good friend of mine, and you may have heard this, back in the early 2000s, had suggested to come down to California and do mortgages.
Oh, wow.
And I did not know anything about mortgages or loan origination or anything like that, but I basically sold everything I had, packed it up, drove down here, didn't even have a job. I ended up sleeping on his couch for a couple months, but I went to work for a company called AmeriQuest, which at the time was a large Alt-A, what they call, which is between subprime and prime mortgages.
So what year was this?
That would be 2002, November 2002.
So you had plenty of time before like 08.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
But surprisingly, he was already down here. He was in originations. He was in the distressed default space. And he said, why don't you get a job originating mortgages? You don't know nothing about it, so learn about mortgages by just originating them. And at that time, of course, the market was on an uplift. There was so much business and generation. They were bringing in pretty much anybody could. If you could sell, you could originate mortgages, which was a good thing. That gave me an opportunity to step into it. And I had always wanted to be in the financial aspect. Yeah. So after only about 4 or 5 months, he goes, move into the distressed default with me. And I'm like, I don't know nothing about that. He goes, well, in any given market, there's always people that have challenging times. And I shared it with the other people in my office that I'm going into distress, and they were like, why would you do that? The market was going up, interest rates were comfortable, the real estate prices were doing so well. But he was right. I moved over into distress in 2003, and even in an up market, there's people who have challenges, there's people in bankruptcy, and all just life events that happen. So we started with a small gentleman who was intrigued by what we're doing. He financed us, and we started buying loans for him. We made him quite a bit of money, so he's like, I'm on out of the business. I'm going to retire. And we were like, okay, what are we going to do from here? Yeah. So we decided to go to the company that was selling us the mortgages. They hired us on. We started a loss mitigation division, which is basically you do workouts with people who are 90 days plus past due. So you come up with creative financing solutions, whether it's a loan modification or refinance or something, sell your property. And we did that for quite a while. And I subsequently moved from there to another hedge fund and then a private equity, all doing the same thing, distressed and default asset management. And some were focused primarily on that. Others, we would start up divisions or departments within their companies to mitigate that loss. And I did that. At the same time, I was licensed as a broker. The only thing I had going for me when I came down to California is I took the real estate salesperson license to show I had some credibility, in the real estate space, because I had
because that's pretty much background. What you needed at that time.
Yes.
Like now we have the NMLS, but that was after 2008.
Oh, yes,
so
yes.
You didn't have to have like a mortgage license, but I believe,
Nothing,
did you have to have?
Not necessarily, but that gave me credibility because during the interview process, I said, well, I have a real estate salesperson's license.
Yeah.
How long have you had it? Just a couple weeks. but just dialoguing with them, they're like,
had to go through the education. I don't know what it was like back in
It's similar to what it is now. You still have to run through
the
prerequisites, is what they call it. You know, you have to go through
so
basic
even
courses.
if you haven't been on the floor,
Yes.
they do put real estate agents through quite the. I mean, our test, like my studying was a lot, and my test was, you know, is supposed to be like quote unquote hard.
Yes.
But I think the real estate one is definitely like a longer period. You know, it's a commitment.
Well, and it just depends on your drive and motivation to get involved in real estate. So for me, it wasn't like just kind of make your way through it. You know, this is my personality. I dig deep into it. So I read every book I could on real estate and then what have you. And so when I did the interview, the lady's like, you know what? You know, I understand you only had your license a week, but I'm willing to give you a chance. So she put me on behind the phones, and
That's amazing.
you just call people, and the leads all came through a system. And I still remember when I made that first call, and the guy goes, "Yeah, I'd like to refinance my house." I had to turn to the person, "What do I do now?" And they're like, "Take an application." I'm like, "How do I do that?" They didn't even show me how to do that. They're like, "You open up the application." So it was a learning curve, but you know, I learned pretty fast, and it was fun. And that allowed me to segment into the distress. And the distress really deep dives you on mortgages, because most of it is retail surface level, which is nothing wrong. You're just originating loans and you're getting the basics. But then when you're in default and distress, you have to learn the mechanics of loan origination, servicing, and you have to go pretty deep on it. So that was intriguing for me. But around 2000, so we go through the credit crisis.
Yeah.
That starts, our business picks up tremendously.
Yes.
Because
I
we're
was gonna
buying
ask
default
that,
and distress.
Because if you're already so really ahead of the game there.
Yes.
Like, what a good call. And everybody in originations, you know, they're like, no, don't do that.
Correct.
Don't do that.
Originally. But you
and then boom, everything crashed.
Well, then they're all calling me, are you guys hiring?
Like,
you know, is there an opportunity there?
Like now everybody's distressed at this point. Like everything's defaulted.
Mm-hmm. So that led me into a gentleman that I knew. I did not know that I went to high school with him, which was a surprise because we came from a different state. And later on, he shared with me, he graduated the same class, same school I went to. And I'm like, how did we never, and it was a small school, never met him. He's like, I was an audiovisual nerd. That's why you never saw me. I was tucked away. But he was the managing director of this private equity firm.
Wow.
So he brought me in to create a trade desk, which is where the buy and selling of the loans. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, it was 70 people when I first came in, around 65, 70. And we ended up growing it up to over 600 people, expanding capacity just tremendously. This is right in the lead up to the credit crisis. And then in the midst of the credit crisis, everybody's using leveraged credit, you know. So even we were having credit facilities from Citibank and some of the larger banks to buy debt. And we built up a book of about 1.4 billion in distressed assets. And then the market froze. There was a complete credit freeze across the market. You're probably aware of that.
Yes.
Bear Stearns collapses. Lehman Brothers starts running into trouble. And that was the time when, of all people, even Goldman Sachs ran into issues. They had to get a credit facility from Warren Buffett, a $20 billion lifeline.
Wow.
And at that time, we were in one of our biggest trades. We were buying from Citigroup themselves. The CEO was a gentleman by the name of Pandit was his last name. And they wanted to freeze the trade. And our CEO was like, no, we've signed contracts. You have to go forward with the trade. It was one of our best buys. We ended up buying quite a substantial pool of loans for 42 cents on the dollar. Wow. Now, mind you, they're not all distressed. When you buy these pools at this level, they're a mixture. Yeah. So you have performing, 30-day late, 60-day late, all the way into foreclosed REO properties. Yeah. So you can imagine we're buying prime A paper, loans. It was a blend, but you're buying them for 40 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
That means if you have an interest rate on paper that's at 6%, you're actually yielding 8 to 10% because you bought it at a discount.
And they were pretty much where, like at that time, I know the prices were lower, so it was probably easier. Yes. But at that time, rates were still in between like 6 and 10%, right?
You're right. Yes, that's correct. So you can imagine if we buy a loan at a discount, that rate's pushed up even more if we can get them performing. And buying them at a discount gives you that flexibility.
Wow. So
after the credit crisis happened, we worked through that whole book of business. But then, of course, Dodd-Frank passed. Yeah. The market changes. People start buying again.
More secure, yeah.
Yes, real estate
Now
values go up.
clients are first.
Yes.
Now the clients are protected.
Dynamics change
now
completely.
Now you need documents,
Yes.
basically,
And
which is good.
well, that was an advantage to
I
us.
like structure,
Yes.
so I don't think that I would have hung. I wouldn't like all the chaos. I like having the structure and everything. At least I know it's going to last.
Structure brings clarity.
Yeah.
For sure.
I like
it. And it's easier to manage
Yes.
as far as that is concerned. And then we had a couple good years of after the credit crisis, even with Dodd-Frank and all that. Of course, there still were a couple years after that the markets had not fully recovered.
Not until like 12.
Correct, because there was a
12, I think
shock
it started,
period,
yep.
and then there's a recovery period. Everybody was kind of not willing to move forward on anything because of the uncertainty in the
waiting,
markets.
yeah.
Yes. So about 2015, 2016, dynamics change. Real estate values start going up. Interest rates come down. What that does to the secondary market is the spreads thin. So
is that good for you? Or?
No, buying loans at 40 cents on the dollar were no longer 40
Yeah.
cents. They were creeping up, 60 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar. Once you breach about 85% of the loan amount,
Yeah.
the value is not there anymore because you have operating costs, you have carry costs, you have all these intricacies of the loans that it just did not make sense. So I took that opportunity to transition over to commercial real estate. I was already managing portfolios for some of the bigger players in New York, Angelo Gordon, Pretty & Partners, which are not so much known, but RBS, Goldman Sachs. I was managing their West Coast distress and default. So I really enjoyed commercial real estate.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different, the dynamics. You're not in one particular asset class. Even though residential has segments to it, you have condos, you have single-family homes, and you have assisted living, you have mobile home parks. I mean, there's just a broad scope there, but commercial is even more diversified.
Yeah.
You have industrial, retail, vacant land,
And
you name it.
less emotion.
Yes. Great point.
More just numbers.
It's all analytics, you know.
I've talked to some people, they're like, I tried, the residential, but it's just way more emotion trying to get their first house or,
Yes.
you're tied rather than some are like, no, I just want to be more tied to the numbers. If the deal makes sense.
When you're on the commercial side, it's all about business, really.
Yep.
If you're on the residential side, you're trying to sell the home that
You're
I
a
raised my
therapist.
children in.
Yeah,
My mom was raised here.
100%.
Oh, yes.
Especially on the residential side, we wear a lot of hats.
Yes, you do.
It's just even like me walking them through the loan and the loan process. I've definitely, you gotta walk them through, be a therapist sometimes, try to get them,
Oh, you're trying to get them to sign loan docs or sign a listing agreement while you're holding their kids and you're petting their dog and everything like that. And on the commercial side, it's a little bit different because it's all numbers driven.
Exactly. Like you already know.
Yes. And it also what appeals to your personality. My personality is I'm more business oriented and, I think you have to be more sensible and emotional and comfortable. Not that I'm not.
Yeah.
It's just I know where my strengths are. So I engage so much better on that back end secondary capital market side. And commercial has a lot to do with that. And where we're not necessarily petting the dog and babysitting, we're crunching the numbers. We're going through balance sheets and spreadsheets to make sense. So it sounds like a viable opportunity to the homeowner to the business owner that's looking to sell.
And I do want to go into, so commercial mainly, and right now in this market, how is that going? So you've been through all the markets.
Yes.
This one has been, in California, the numbers are they haven't really been making as much sense. True. So how do you kind of get around that? Or how have you been able to keep going? Is there something that you lean into more?
Yes. So the COVID, experience created a whole different dynamics than the credit crisis. There's some parallels, but there's also some just dichotomy between the two that they don't match. Yeah. Surprisingly, real estate took off during COVID. Yeah. Because most people thought, the real estate market would collapse. Yes.
Even all the investors, you better be refinancing all of your properties.
Yes.
And trying to get, because like if they're already in there to refinance their properties, take out, cash out, and go buy another one. So I felt like that was mainly the investor strategy in 2020.
Pull as much equity as you can.
Pull as much as you can out, and let's buy as much because they're in 2%.
Well,
so while you're in there, if you're going to refinance it anyways,
that was the time to do it.
That was the time. So I felt like that. Yeah, but I'm hearing on the commercial side, a lot of these, if they did do that, the rates were lower,
yes,
a lot lower, and now we're 3 to 4 year, or now
I know time is flying. Yeah,
Now
we've
we're
moved through it so quick. Yeah, it's crazy. Yes,
but a lot of people have like prepayment penalties, 3 years, 5 years. So, but I hear this past year and coming into this year, there's a lot that are maturing.
Yes,
so, and
correct.
they might now, what's going to happen? Like, how are they going to, is that going to fall into your like distress properties? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad-based situation. Yeah. So what you have is right after COVID, you have interest rates are still comfortable.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, people are expecting this market to crash. So there's a huge peel back in people buying commercial properties. So the market, even on the retail or client-facing side, dried up in commercial. And then, of course, that didn't happen. The opposite happened. Everybody started buying, and people were taking advantage of that opportunity. The challenge, what happened was interest rates started going up. And when the interest rate started rising, that environment, that affects commercial real estate so much differently than residential. And what happens is once you go above the $5, $10, $20 million mark when it comes to commercial real estate, they're borrowing on short-term credit facilities. So they're typically 3, 5, and 10 years. Yep. So if most of them are running their whole pro forma, their whole financial expectations are on a 3-year basis. Yeah. So if I bought a large $100 million commercial building, I'm at 3, 4%, maybe even less. And all of a sudden, I go to refinance, it's 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
Imagine how that just throws a wrench into your financial performance.
And also on those big deals like that, it's not just one investor. No. Usually, there's lots of investors. So now you either have to go back and get more money from them or raise more, add more people to the deals that usually.
Yeah, so they're called capital calls. Yep. Those are typically on smaller investors. When you're talking at the institutional level or the larger private equity level, they just try to mitigate. It goes through what's called special servicing, so they pause everything. You got to remember the banks, because these are such large loans, the banks do not want the properties back. They're not in the business of owning properties. They're in the business of creating loans. Yeah. So they will work as much as they can up to a point before they do have to take the property back. On the lower level, which, what I mean by the lower level is the 500,000 up to the 5 million range, which is your typical private investor, maybe, a retired couple or just somebody looking for cash flow. Yep. A business owner, anybody who's looking into that space. They're typically looking at a 5-unit multifamily. Maybe they're looking to buy a Starbucks or a small office building, a small strip center. They run into the challenges because the biggest dynamic that was hit was hospitality. Because of COVID, nobody was traveling. So you have a massive hit in the hotel industry, followed by office space, which retail, is still struggling to recover, and then into retail.
Well, office was huge because most just want, everybody had to go home.
Yes.
And I worked from home at the time. And they had this big old building, and they were like, once we got through like almost a year in COVID, it's like, okay, what do we do? Yes. Like as a business, do we keep it? Because it's just at that point just costing.
Well, and they're kind of obligated because you've signed a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year lease. So you can't make it as a business. And even the restaurants were struggling, which falls under the retail dynamics.
I think that they got hit, the mom and pop, the restaurants got hit the
tremendously.
most.
Estimates range, but 200 to 500,000 restaurants nationwide closed because of that.
That was so sad,
Which most people don't realize the ripple effect. So you say, the restaurant just closed. Well, you think about the guy or gal who owns the building. You think about all the servers. You think about all the suppliers that bring food. All the different businesses that matriculates down to that just get destroyed by it. It was such an unfortunate event. But the office space in itself, the dynamics of operations changed. all of a sudden we found we could operate from home. People did not feel the need to go in the office because with Zoom and the movement in even how we communicate allowed them
it
to
makes sense.
transition.
If you can have a job, or at
Yes.
least like a hybrid.
Yeah.
I think everybody should be hybrid. You
Yes.
just be happier. Like you get to get some, some of the stuff done that you need, and not every day at the office so you're just spending, all like you're probably blowing time like hanging out with everybody anyways.
Yes.
So you might as well just go like 2 or 3 days a week, put all of your time and energy into it, and then
Yes.
have that time. So I prefer that, but that it's such. I mean, it makes sense that.
Well, it's specific to the business. It depends on the business you're in, of course. Some businesses you have to be there.
Yeah.
Service
a
oriented.
server, yeah.
Yes, service oriented. You have to be
I was
there.
in the industry for like 12, 15 years. I switched during COVID
Oh,
because
yes.
I was the first one to lose my job, and I became a loan officer.
Oh, fantastic.
So I actually like what you mentioned earlier when they just threw you in and
Yes.
you like same. And it was really busy, and I wish now that I was as good as I am now, because I would have done, like I just didn't know, even though all the business was there
Yes.
in 2020, but it was hard for me to sell a 2.7 rate.
Yeah.
And then like 6 months later, I'm selling a 6% for 10,000.
And everybody's wanting a 6% when before, you were just
But
challenging.
it was
them
like
to
so
it.
hard for me. And now I'm like, man, if I can only, the next, the next cycle. But I had to learn on my, luckily I had a great manager that we did everything like over the phone and stuff. But yeah, it was tough. I like basically had to learn and do everything. And I was just in my own little office.
Well, the next cycle is upon us, and one thing
Yep.
you'll find is that
ready.
life runs in cycles, as
Yeah.
does the economy, and even when it comes to real estate, it's a very cyclical
Yeah.
business. Now, it's normally on a 10-year pattern, but COVID kind of threw that wrench in there, and when it comes to commercial real estate, there are so many opportunities there. It just depends what a person's risk tolerance is and what they're looking for. Whether you're young, you're halfway through your career, you're entering retirement, that's going to really dictate your tolerance level. And what we have seen is people will transition from more riskier asset classes, which would probably be office and hospitality. They'll segment into multifamily, which is where you just have an apartment building and you have tenants in there,
Yep.
which does require some management. And then after that, as you move into your later years, you would transition out of maybe multifamily into what we call triple net. And a triple net is a retail business such as an AutoZone, a
Yep.
McDonald's, a Starbucks, where you own the building. You get in one of these corporate franchises, they will pay the rents. So let's say you own a McDonald's and it's on a corner,
Yep.
and the McDonald's isn't doing so well. The corporate parent company steps in and makes sure that you never miss out on a payment. The triple net
that's awesome.
states that they pay not only your lease, they pay all the taxes, they pay all the property, not only the property taxes, the property insurance, and all the maintenance. So the ideal investment for someone who's more passive
Yeah.
and they don't have as much upside is a triple net. They're getting cash flow every month. They're making money, and it has an appreciation value to it. It has depreciation. So depending where a person is financially, they may be willing to take more risk at a hospitality like a small hotel, or they may move into office space. They do development and then transition into multifamily, and then subsequently into triple nets, which are less risky.
Wow.
And the opportunity, there's people say, well, when's a good time to get into the business? Always. If you could nail the market,
Yeah.
everybody would be billionaires, and we all do it. But it's how you mitigate getting into the business, how you kind of determine, how do I enter into the market? And to highlight maybe some of that is you decide what kind of industry really appeals to me. Because typically when you get into a business, you're going to be boots on the ground.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go in there. It's your building. So, you either like it cosmetically or you buy into a value add opportunity, which is a slightly distressed building that needs some, love and care. Maybe it needs a new parking lot, or it needs a fresh coat of paint, or maybe it needs some interior designing, which I know you have some really good experience doing that.
I've had to learn a lot during this market.
Yes.
I became a video editor, host, interior designer.
It looks fantastic, but that plays into commercial space, because you can probably walk into a commercial, whether it's a bookstore, whether it's a coffee shop, whether it's a yoga studio, whether it's a hair salon. And I know you probably look around and say, you know what? I could do something with this. I could transform this location. And what that does is that environment will increase traffic, because if it's pleasant to be there, people want to be there.
If it's cozy,
Yes.
It's definitely, aesthetic is, especially for those businesses, aesthetic is...
Sight, sound, smell. That's what attracts people.
Even the place I used to work for that does very well. It's a very big business, but Bungalow, it's like built like a house. It feels like a house inside.
So it's cozy. It's warm and inviting.
But it's like a concept that wasn't really a thing. Like they came, and then it looks like a giant house party. So it's like, but that's why people just loved it.
So my way to brighten up things is I look at the balance sheet and how people can, improve their bottom line. We look at the insurance and say, how can we, get better rates on our insurance, on the property management and everything.
Insurance is also a tricky thing with the commercial right now, right?
Yes, it is. Especially here in Southern California with the fires that recently occurred. In California specific, insurance is challenging because many of the larger national companies have pulled back.
Yes.
So the insurance rates have just gone up tremendously. And, the insurance commissioner is there to ensure that we're not gouged, but there's a fine line, because right now, just on the residential side, I know people are just unbelievable levels of insurance, and it's moving over into commercial. But depending on your business, that will determine your rates. So an office building, which has very low maintenance, people are just coming there, they're sitting at a desk. There's not much that can really happen per se, as opposed to if you have a restaurant with a bunch of ovens and burners,
100%,
or if you have a cement factory.
People running around, you're more likely.
That determines everything. So it really depends on what sector and what class you're in. But I would share with your viewers or anybody out there who's interested in exploring commercial real estate that, the time is now, and it for someone who is really looking to get invested in real estate, you don't rush into it. You start small. And the beauty of your program here, and also YouTube and other sites, allows someone to at least get the surface level or the entry level of what is commercial real estate, what does it entail, and how can I get involved. And then I would suggest to people to identify one or two books to immerse themselves, talk to family and friends, someone in your sphere of influence owns a business. They own a restaurant. Maybe they own just an apartment complex or a small unit. Ask them their experience and ask them how they got started in the business. And then, of course, initially, you want to start saving money on the side. You're going to need a down payment. And some people, they will get more advanced in that. They will do what are called syndications, where they will partner up with other investors. They'll pool their money together, maybe. The family and friends is typically where people start with something like that. You start small. You get your feet wet by buying a small business, maybe a fourplex, which is still considered residential, or you move up into the 5-6plex. You get comfortable at managing that, and then as it appreciates, then you sell it, and you do a 1031, which is a tax deferment. And you step up to the next level. You get into a 1020 unit and then move up.
Just transfer that over.
There's a way to move into that.
Those are really good ones.
Creative.
And then you also do development.
Yes.
So is that you're involved with that? You also have a partner that does Miguel mostly focus on development?
Yes. So Miguel Barrera, he's my primary partner on that. He runs the La House Company division, which is development. It's it can be anything from ground up development to renovating or repurposing a building. So like right now we have a multifamily up in LA. It's a 6-unit. We are moving forward with entitlements for affordable housing. Affordable housing has certain benefits to it that allows you to put a higher density bonus on the land, whereas if you went market rate, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 bedrooms multiple bathrooms. Where affordable housing is typically a 1-bedroom bathroom scenario. It doesn't have the parking requirements because there's a need for affordable housing. Housing's expensive in Southern California, as it is in other places throughout the United States, any of the big metro areas.
But California is pretty big.
Oh, specifically here. So, the states has incentives to help expedite entitlement processes.
Would that be the same Section 8?
No, it's different than Section 8, but there are some similar characteristics.
Do you still get the payment? Because I know some people like doing the Section 8 because they get that automatic.
Yeah, the guaranteed payment from the government.
The guaranteed payment. Yeah.
Well, the beauty of affordable housing, no, but there are incentives. So what the city of LA is doing and what even the state of California is doing, they do master leases. So you build a building. Surprisingly, on a 10,000 square foot lot, you can put 75 units affordable housing on there. That's going up 6 floors. It only requires 1 floor be concrete. The other 6 can be wood frame. If you go above 7 floors, everything has to be concrete. So there's these dynamics of that. But the city will step in, and there's a lot of nonprofits that you partner with. And the city will do what's called a master lease. So they will rent out the whole building. They will pay you monthly the full rent for all 75 units. And in turn, they work with nonprofits. And they do all the property management. They do all the screening of the tenants. And typically, their master lease is for 3 to 5 years. And it's excellent for a developer because you can almost build to suit, the design and what their requirements are. And then they step right in and they lease it from you right after that. So it's beautiful.
What would be, what are some areas that you recommend that to kind of develop in? Is LA, because it's harder to get permits over there and stuff. Do you have a sweet spot that you're kind of drawn to right now?
Well, when investing in real estate, especially for the new investor, they typically advise, and I would too, is you want to invest in something that you can drive to, that you're not more than 3 hours away from. So for here in Southern California, Arizona, Nevada are within that tolerance range. Price points are more comfortable. Southern California is quite expensive as an entry for someone who's just starting to get into commercial real estate. I would highly recommend that they either go into the Inland Empire. San Diego is a great place, or they segment over into Nevada, Arizona, because it's not too far to drive. I would also suggest, depending where they're in, multifamily is not for everybody. Development's definitely not for everybody. Some people are like, I want to own restaurants. Fantastic. You can get really good pricing on restaurants in Arizona, in Nevada, and parts of the Inland Empire. And then there it all relates back to what is my return on my investment, which is called a capitalization rate. You may have heard the term cap rate, which is expressed in a percentage, is like, how much am I going to be earning off this? And you'll hear the term 4 cap, 5 cap, what's comfortable. And it really depends. If you're borrowing money at 5% and your cap rate is at 5%, you're making nothing. Plus there's operational costs. But if you're borrowing at 5 and your cap rate's at 7, there's a 2% spread. And, 0.5%, 1%'s eaten up by cost. So you're making 1% on whatever that investment is. And the numbers can be quite large in commercial real estate.
But you will still build appreciation, and it's still going to, it's a long game.
It is.
We already know that.
It is.
We already know that. So if you're looking for fast cash, the distressed properties, maybe fix and flips, I feel like, or a wholesale. Everything else.
That is a great market. And it started, of course, during the credit crisis because people were walking away from their homes and people became extremely wealthy in the fix and flip industry. But dynamics have changed. Values have gone up. And now people know that there's value in their property. Unfortunately, with the fires that happened in LA, people are looking at them as the next target. But there's already well-established people in the distressed fix and flip market. Every market has, its merits and its disadvantages. And I really tell people, go where your passion is, because it's a bumpy ride, but it's a fun ride.
It'll be worth it.
And true wealth in America is made in real estate. Short of coming up with that new AI technology or something like Elon Musk or a Bezos, short of inheriting the money, the third greatest way to real wealth is commercial real estate.
And you don't have to invent anything.
You don't have to invent anything. And you know what? I love what they say. They
already know.
Success leaves clues.
And somebody's done it. Yeah. And it's a little, I do think it's great nowadays because we do have social media.
Yes.
I mean, I've learned how to build a business, and I've done all these things from, YouTube, but it took me a while. I found certain people, but also you get the negative end of that.
Yes.
There's also a lot of misinformation. Correct. Or more like the guru types that are like, oh, you don't need any money to do anything.
Yes.
And so I feel like we are in a great time. There is a lot of opportunity, but you still have to pay attention because there's going to be, especially in real estate, you know, it is a long game.
It is.
And it's being pitched a lot of times like, oh, you could just, it's just super simple. And it can be, but you're going to have a lot of bumps. You want to meet somebody that knows what they're doing or that has done it and that can help you, or, maybe like a mentor, but.
Yeah, there's always that word of caution. I mean, in any industry, there's people looking to take advantage of it. And even in commercial real estate, there's these, and you probably see them on social media, make money. The fix and flip is the newest one. That's gonna transition into something else. There are, though, true, authentic courses and classes you can take. So when I was in distress, I was the primary trainer for a lot of the different divisions. So I would write the policies and procedures, all the manuals that related to what do we do from acquisition to resolution. Some people will say from cradle to grave, but it's basically from the moment that we take that note or that property on our books all the way to when we sell it and we close escrow, what happens, everything in between. So I would outline kind of the management from that acquisition all the way to when we sold it and what to do in between, and managing the risk along the way is a key component of that. And I really enjoy training and coaching people and engaging them. And even with our current clients and some of our investors, some of them are very savvy, don't get me wrong. But even when I was managing Goldman Sachs's portfolio, they would bring in people from Dallas and New York. We'd sit in a conference room, and then I would explain to them what we do in the default loss mitigation space. And, as sharp as these men and women were, it was new to them because it's creative financing. It's outside the box thinking. And it was such a different game to them that I would have to go a little bit deeper. And that gave me an opportunity to explain in detail in a more open language of how you manage a distressed asset and how you build that asset from a troubled asset to get it reperforming again. And then once it's reperforming, you can sell it on the secondary market. So,
and you teach this.
Yes, I do. I enjoy, and I try and keep it.
Do you do videos or like write a book, or you wrote a book?
I have written a text manual on.
Did you?
Yes, it's on Amazon.
Okay, we're gonna put it. I'm gonna put it.
It's people say you're an author, but mine are more text manuals. So unless you're into finance, but it's called Trade Secrets.
Okay.
How to buy and sell mortgages in today's market. It's
what a great tool.
It's an entry level on how you buy in the secondary market loans.
Okay.
Now, it's not for everybody, but real estate is fantastic. And if you want to take it to that next level, you buy the debt behind the asset.
Okay.
Because one thing is when you control the debt, you control the asset, really, because you're the lender. You can dictate terms. I can modify that loan however I want because I own it.
Down the line.
You can make an improvement to it. If someone's in a distressed default situation, you can do a workout. I can take the payments that they missed. I can put them on the back of the loan. They're called arrears. I can create what's called a silent second, where someone who hasn't paid for 9 months, but you know what? They had a challenging situation. They had a death in the family. Maybe they had a medical issue, but they're back on their feet and they can afford the property. So I may take those 9 months of payment, make it a second mortgage at 0% interest, put it on the back of the property with a security instrument. And when they go sell the property, I get paid off in the end. So it gives them a break. That's the beauty of owning the debt as opposed to owning the asset. There's benefits to both.
That's amazing.
That's an entry level to get into that market. And I think for those that are looking to that, it is a robust and engaging market to be in.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're moving into that next cycle of that. You're starting to see distress pick up. You know, one of the things you brought up is where are we at now, and we'll continue to see that.
Commercial, but we're starting to come back down on the rates, and right now, you said to throw back to a different market where, you know, people were just unsure. They were waiting like after 2008. And I see that a lot right now. I feel like in the next 6 months, there's probably going to be a lot more moves being made. But with the election also being last year, lots of changes have been happening all around us. And I feel like I have so many clients or investors just, you know, we're anticipating that they're going to go lower. So I feel like, you know, sellers don't want to sell right now. They kind of want to wait. You know, like everyone's just kind of in a little pause. Like, should I refinance right now? Like, it's good, but is it going to be better in a couple of months? So I think that we're still a little paused right now, but hopefully I'm an optimist. So I think
I am an optimist. You
I
have
think
to be
by the end of the year we're going to be back in the fours.
You have to be an optimist. In commercial real estate, you have to have the vision and the optimism to continue forward.
Come on, just give me some fours.
You know, the thing about what you said last year was the lead up to the election. So for 6 months, even when we were talking with clients and investors, they're like, well, we're kind of on a pause.
We have to wait,
because the you know, if you had asked us 20 years ago, there was not that much difference so much in the vision, or at least the financial markets, as it related to the multiple parties that we have. This election, there was a big difference in visions, massive.
So it would be so different.
It would be. And so investors wanted to pause. They're like, we're not willing to put our money out there.
Just wait.
And after the election, markets did pick up. Now, interest rates lag behind everything. And as much as the current administration wants to bring them down, there is a separation.
They don't have a direct contact.
No, they don't. The Federal Reserve has a different mandate.
But things that are happening do. Like there are more people are going on unemployment. You know, they're firing a bunch of people basically, but that does have, you know, a connection to our rates. Well, like when unemployment goes up.
Well, inflation is still high when you think about it, and there is, you know, when it comes to all these moving parts with the economy, there's not one immediate fix that you can say, if I reduce rates back down to zero, all of a sudden the economy is going to get good. Actually, the opposite is going to happen, because if rates go down too fast, the real estate market is already stressed, meaning there's low inventory. Now imagine pushing interest rates down to zero. Prices are going to go even higher. So a house that's $1 million now is going to be $1.3, $1.5 million because the interest rates are so low, and it'll push the spread. It'll create just a conundrum.
I think we should just see.
Yes. Well, there's opportunity out there for everybody.
Because if we get to like the 4%, that's when it's going to be. It's still it's going to cause you know, more prices to go up, but it will open up more inventory. Because a lot of sellers, I mean, most of them are in like 2-3%, so they can't. Most of them cannot purchase right now with where the rates are.
If you're at a 2%, how are you going to enter this market on a 5 or 6%?
No,
you'd be like some of these large commercial people who are on a 3-year refinance. They borrowed at 2, and now their rate's at 6, and we're talking on $100 million. I mean, it's a huge shock, and not everybody can afford that. And but the opportunity is there, because oftentimes what we're seeing is if you own a $1.5 million here in California, and yes, you're at 2%, but you're nearing retirement age, you may say, you know what, I might as well cash in all that equity and move to another state that's maybe tax favorable, and the prices are not so high. So you may have somewhat of an exodus.
In that other state.
True. Well, you know what? Florida's a beautiful state. Texas. I mean,
I want to go to Texas.
Yeah, Arizona, Nevada. You know, yes. Yeah.
And because we talked about that with like my parents, but if they sell, you know, their house is paid off and they've had it for 30 years, but if they sell, it's basically once you sell and move somewhere else, like they won't be able to come back.
Probably not. Yes, unfortunately, prices in the economy.
That's where we had to. I was like, okay, let's just wait a while, and don't make any rash, because he just retired.
I would make I would argue that the Virgin Islands are still a U.S. territory.
Yeah.
So the U.S. Virgin Islands, if you haven't been there, it's like being in the United States, but you're in the Caribbean. I mean, you also have Puerto Rico, which has its challenges too. If you want to go towards Asia, Guam and America Samoa, they're U.S. territories. So there are places where our America, home away from home. But yes, it is difficult that if you've lived in Southern California. I was born and raised in military family, so I traveled a lot.
Okay.
Our son is active duty Marine. He's coming home next week. What a blessing after his 5-year tour.
Tell him thank you for serving.
Of course.
I love working with my veterans.
He's a great young man, and he already has a vision for his future. So, praise the Lord. He's already knows what he's going to be doing. But that is one of the challenges is as you move into California, you get sticker shock. Because I don't think people are aware of the cost here. The economy is economy of its own, and whether it's labeled the 6th, 7th, or 8th largest economy in the world, it is also very expensive to be here because we have different taxes. Everything is taxed here, and it's not for the faint at heart. But it depends what industry you're in. There wouldn't be these businesses still here if you couldn't make money here. So it just really depends.
That's what we're all hanging on because you know that it is possible.
It is.
So it's like just, but we also know that there's it's always fluctuating. There's seasons, there's markets, there's harvest.
Yes.
We've been in the farming, I call it I've been it's been a lot of seed planting the last couple of years, in these market, why we can't exactly make moves, but we've been able to build relationships and get connected. And once those doors do start to open, then
Well, the Bible has a good verse about the sower of the seed, and also the parable of the talents, and you can really make it wherever you want to be. You just have to have a heart for whatever you do. So they say that, and this is such a cliche, that if you're doing what you love, you've never worked a day in your life. But
I feel that
it is true, and I would also add on to that. They say whatever you think about all the time, that's probably where you should be. So if you're in finance, but you're always thinking about food and making dinner, or you're always thinking about fashion and clothing, or if you walk into a business and you may be in I don't know, maybe you're in a hair salon, but you're like, man, this place could use some improvement. Maybe you should be an interior designer. So you think so much about what you probably should be doing. And one thing they have found is you can become wealthy in any segment of society. People didn't think you could make money in garbage. The people who own Waste Management, the family that owns that, are billionaires. You can make money in anything. There's a gentleman we know, Crown Plastics. The guy is a very wealthy gentleman, and all he's making is plastic containers. Who would have thought?
I know.
Cardboard, garbage, recyclables, all the things people don't want to talk about. There's money to be made, let alone the things that people love. If you have a passion for watches or clothing or, a restaurant, a hotel, everything. You just pour your heart and soul into it. It ain't going to be easy. That's for sure. It is a very bumpy road. And I would not suggest that commercial real estate is easy, but it has such wonderful rewards. And it's something that if somebody's interested in looking on how do I create legacy wealth, I would recommend,
that's what I'm thinking.
Commercial real estate.
I know I'm one of those psychopaths. I'm like, I'm going to be the one to build wealth for my family, kind of break that generational curse. So.
Yeah, you move them into the mold, and it's something that when our son comes back, I know he has his own vision, but it's something that I'm going to engage with him to see if he has interest there, and who knows where it goes.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you, Talon. Thank you for serving. And just to kind of wrap up here, looking ahead, what for 2025?
Yes.
Maybe some predictions, kind of some goals of yours.
Well, I would say we are on the right path. Regardless of what your political views might be, it all comes down to how does it affect me, the end user. There is a federal level, there is a state level, and then there's kind of a local level, down to the county and the city. LA has its challenges. Los Angeles does. We're in Orange County right now. It's not to say that everywhere there are not opportunities to invest. But for 2025, if someone were to look at commercial real estate, I would say now is the time to act. Don't be patient and say, well, next year I'll get into it. No, if anything, lay the foundation, and the foundation is knowledge. So the first thing I would suggest is they watch your program and, they listen to your podcast.
I did all the audiobooks too.
Yeah, get the books, watch the YouTubes, and then, like I said, reach out to somebody in your family, or even through LinkedIn, find someone who owns whatever you're wanting to be. If you're wanting to be in a hotel or restaurant, reach out to them. Successful people, for the most part, want to share their knowledge. Yep. They're an open book.
100%.
And if you just say, you know what, can I be a protege or a mentee?
Yep.
They'll be sure. Now, you want to value their time. You don't want to waste their time. So you go to them with 1 to 2, maybe 3 questions every time you talk to them. And everything inches you towards your goal. How did you get started? What would you recommend to me for 2025? And for your listeners and viewers, my thought would be, okay, set out an action plan. Start with 3 things. And every day, just read for 15 to 30 minutes. Even with exercise, they start with a walk around the block. Well, when it comes to investing in real estate, just maybe watch a 5-minute clip. You don't have to watch the 1-hour video. Watch 5 minutes of it, digest it, think about it. Start a journal maybe on investing, and you want to hone in not just on commercial real estate, because it is broad-based. You have to be involved in the economy. Where is the market moving? How are food prices moving? How are interest rates moving? Where are we at globally? All of those play a part into it. And not that you have to be, as interested as I am in it. You don't have to delve that deep, but it does help to have a surface layer of all that, and then hone in on what you want.
And a niche.
Yes, and if
there's so many different.
Have a big dream at the back of your journal. Write in there your goal. I, by the year 2035, will own $100 million in commercial real estate, and you have the whole front of that journal to create that journey that gets you to the end of that journal and that target. And let's say you don't get 100 million, but by the time you get to the end of that journal, you're at 65 million. Hey, that's not a bad place to be. Yeah. So you just have to create those incremental steps and constantly keep that vision in front of you, and know that it's not going to be easy, but guess what? It's going to be a fun, rewarding journey for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ezra. I'm going to have everything below, all of his information and that book link. I will put that in there. I did not know about that. But please, if this has helped you, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I will have it all below. Thank you.
And thank you so much for everything, Tiffany. It's been such a pleasure being with you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.